The moment Marcus Reynolds' hand touched the doorknob, his entire future changed, he just didn't know it yet. The polished brass turned easily under his grip, and as the door swung open, time seemed to slow. There stood Sophia Kwan, CEO of Meridian Innovations and his direct boss, in nothing but a silk slip, her startled eyes meeting his in the mirror. In that frozen second, Marcus realized two devastating truths. He had just violated the privacy of the most powerful woman in the company, and worse, the immediate attraction that surged through him would threaten the careful life he'd built for himself and his daughter. "Mr. Reynolds." Sophia gasped, grabbing a blazer to cover herself. Marcus's face burned with mortification as he stammered apologies, backing away. This wasn't just embarrassment, this was his career, his stability, his daughter's security all hanging by a thread. The conference hotel had somehow double-booked their rooms, and now his simple mistake could cost him everything. But as he retreated, he caught something unexpected in Sophia's expression, not just anger or shock, but something that mirrored his own reaction. What was that look? And why did it feel like this accidental encounter had awakened something dormant in both of them? Marcus spent the next 3 days of the business conference avoiding Sophia at all costs, taking different elevators, sitting at opposite ends of meeting rooms, and ducking into restrooms whenever he saw her approaching. His colleagues noticed his strange behavior, but he couldn't explain. How could he tell them that every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing there, vulnerable yet powerful? Or that in that brief moment, he'd felt more alive than he had in the 5 years since his wife's death? His 8-year-old daughter Emma depended on him completely, he couldn't risk their stability for whatever this feeling was. Marcus had always been methodical, planning every aspect of his life since losing his wife Claire to cancer. His morning routine was precise: wake at 5:30, prepare Emma's lunch, review her homework, make breakfast, and get her to school before heading to his job as marketing manager at Meridian. His colleagues often teased him about his color-coded calendar and his habit of bringing his own coffee in a thermos rather than risking the unpredictable quality of the break room brew. This orderliness wasn't just preference, it was survival. Structure had been his lifeline when grief threatened to drown him, and now it was the framework that kept Emma's world stable. Emma was her father's opposite, spontaneous, creative, with wild curly hair that refused to stay in the neat braids Marcus attempted each morning. She had her mother's laugh and curious nature, always bringing home rocks, leaves, and occasionally small insects that fascinated her. Marcus's sister Vanessa often said Emma had inherited all the chaos gene that Marcus lacked. Despite their differences, father and daughter had formed a tight unit, navigating their loss by creating new traditions: Friday night science experiments, Sunday morning pancakes shaped like whatever Emma was studying in school, and a bedtime ritual of sharing 3 good things about their day. On the 4th day of the conference, Marcus was reviewing presentation materials alone in the conference room when the door opened. Sophia walked in, composed in her tailored navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. "We need to talk about what happened," she said simply, closing the door behind her. Marcus stood, knocking over his coffee. As he scrambled to clean the spill, Sophia moved to help, their hands brushing. The electric contact made them both freeze. "I'm not going to fire you," she said quietly. "But I need to understand why you've been looking at me like that ever since." Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang, the school nurse. Emma had fallen on the playground and needed to go to the hospital. As he rushed out, Sophia called after him, "This conversation isn't over, Reynolds." The emergency room doctor confirmed Emma had a broken arm, nothing more serious. As Marcus sat beside his daughter's hospital bed, watching her sleep after being sedated for the setting procedure, he felt a presence beside him. Turning, he was shocked to see Sophia standing there, holding a stuffed bear. "How did you?" he began. "I'm your emergency contact backup on your company forms," she explained. "They called when they couldn't reach you." Marcus was stunned, not just by her appearance but by the genuine concern in her eyes. This wasn't the cold, calculating CEO known for ruthless business decisions. This was someone else entirely. Sophia Kwan had built Meridian Innovations from a struggling startup to a tech powerhouse in just over a decade. At 38, she was known for her brilliant strategic mind and uncompromising standards. The business press called her the Velvet Hammer, elegant in approach but devastating in impact. Employees respected her vision but feared her perfectionism. Few knew about her humble beginnings as the daughter of Chinese immigrants who ran a small grocery store in Queens, where she'd stocked shelves after school while teaching herself coding from borrowed library books. Even fewer knew about the 3 failed startups before Meridian, or the fiancé who'd left when her work hours became too demanding. Sophia had learned early that vulnerability was a luxury she couldn't afford in the male-dominated tech world. Dar. Priya Sharma, Emma's regular pediatrician, arrived to check on her patient. She raised an eyebrow at finding the CEO of Meridian Innovations in the hospital room but said nothing as she examined Emma's cast. Marcus had known Priya since medical school, where she'd been Claire's roommate and later her oncologist during those final difficult months. Now she was not just Emma's doctor but a family friend who occasionally joined them for dinner, bringing her famous homemade samosas that Emma devoured. Priya's presence had been a constant comfort through their grief, though Marcus sometimes caught her watching him with concern when she thought he wasn't looking. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Sophia began finding reasons to work directly with Marcus on his marketing projects. Their late nights at the office became a routine, ordering takeout and discussing strategies that somehow always drifted to personal conversations. Marcus learned about Sophia's childhood in a struggling immigrant family, her fight to be taken seriously in the tech world, and the loneliness of her success. He shared stories of raising Emma alone, his fears of failing his daughter, and the grief he still carried. One night, as they walked to the parking garage, Sophia asked if Emma was still collecting science books. Marcus stopped walking. "How did you know that?" Sophia smiled. "You mentioned it once, weeks ago." The realization that she had been listening, truly listening, to him all this time made something crack open in his chest. Marcus's best friend Daniel Torres noticed the change immediately. "You're smiling at your phone now? Who are you and what have you done with Marcus Reynolds?" He joked during their weekly basketball game. Daniel had been Marcus's roommate in college and best man at his wedding. When Claire died, it was Daniel who had moved in for 3 months, making sure Marcus ate and helping with Emma while Marcus navigated the fog of early grief. As the owner of a successful construction company, Daniel had flexible hours and still picked Emma up from school 1 day a week, taking her for ice cream and uncle time. Now, as they sat on the bleachers after their game, Marcus found himself confiding in Daniel about Sophia. "A CEO, Mark? You never make anything easy, do you?" Daniel said, but his eyes were kind. "Just be careful. Emma's heart is involved here too." At Meridian, Marcus's assistant Olivia Jackson watched the developing situation with interest. At 25, Olivia was sharp, ambitious, and fiercely loyal to Marcus, who had championed her promotion from the intern pool despite her lack of an Ivy League degree. She ran interference when Marcus needed to leave early for Emma's events and organized the department's gift when Emma was hospitalized. Now she strategically rearranged Marcus's schedule to create opportunities for him to cross paths with Sophia, while deflecting the curious questions from office gossips. "The marketing report? I believe Ms. Kwan requested it personally," she would say innocently, sending Marcus to the executive floor. Later, she'd wink at him when he returned looking slightly flustered. The company's annual charity gala arrived, and Marcus attended alone as usual. He watched from across the ballroom as Sophia charmed investors in her elegant red gown. When their eyes met across the crowd, neither looked away. Later, as he waited for his car, Sophia appeared beside him. "Dance with me," she said, holding out her hand. "There's no music," Marcus replied. She smiled. "Does that matter?" In the empty parking garage, under fluorescent lights, they swayed together. When he finally gathered the courage to kiss her, it felt inevitable, like coming home to a place he'd never been before. But as they broke apart, Marcus saw a camera flash from the darkness. A paparazzo, hunting for dirt on the famous CEO, had just captured everything. The photographer, Trevor Blackwood, had been trailing Sophia for weeks on assignment from Tech Tattle, a notorious industry blog that specialized in exposing the personal lives of tech executives. Trevor had built his career on catching powerful people in compromising positions, but as he reviewed the photos of Sophia and Marcus dancing in the deserted garage, something gave him pause. There was a tenderness in the images that felt different from his usual salacious captures. Trevor had grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes where he'd learned to observe carefully to survive. Now, looking at the genuine emotion on these faces, he felt an unfamiliar twinge of conscience. Still, rent was due, and Tech Tattle paid well. He uploaded the photos, but cropped them to obscure Marcus's face, telling himself it was just to focus on the more recognizable subject. The photos hit the company intranet the next morning. By noon, Marcus was summoned to the board of directors, where he found Sophia already seated, her face unreadable. The chairman, Richard Hargrove, spoke gravely about company policy, inappropriate relationships, and conflicts of interest. Marcus's heart sank. This was exactly what he had feared. His job was over. How would he support Emma now? But then Sophia stood, her voice steady. If you're suggesting that I can't have a personal life because of my position, or that Mr. Reynolds should be penalized for a relationship that is entirely consensual, then perhaps you should review your outdated policies. She placed a folder on the table. Or perhaps you should review my resignation letter. The room erupted in chaos as Marcus stared at her in disbelief. Was she really willing to give up everything she'd built, for him? Richard Hargrove had been on Meridian's board since before Sophia took over as CEO. At 67, he represented the old guard of tech leadership, brilliant but traditional, uncomfortable with the industry's evolving culture. He had initially opposed Sophia's appointment, arguing she was too young and untested, but her results had silenced his objections. Now, faced with her ultimatum, he saw not just a policy issue but a power struggle. If she won this battle, his influence would be permanently diminished. Yet as the other board members began arguing, Richard found himself studying Sophia's face. He recognized something in her expression, the same look his late wife had given him 40 years ago when she told him to choose between his 70-hour workweeks and their marriage. He had chosen work and regretted it every day since her passing last year. Perhaps, he said, cutting through the noise, we should consider updating our policies to reflect modern realities. Outside the boardroom, Marcus pulled Sophia into an empty office. You can't resign, he insisted. Your company is your life's work. Sophia shook her head. No company is worth sacrificing real connection. I've spent 15 years building Meridian, but what's the point of success if you're alone at the top? Marcus took her hands. But what about Emma? What will she think about all this? Sophia's expression softened. Why don't we ask her? The question hung between them. A future neither had imagined suddenly possible. But as they prepared to leave, Sophia's assistant rushed in. The Peterson contract is falling apart, they're threatening to pull out completely. Sophia's face fell. I have to handle this. It affects thousands of jobs. Marcus nodded, understanding. Go. We'll figure this out later. But as she walked away, he wondered if there would be a later, or if reality had finally caught up with their impossible dream. The Peterson contract was Meridian's largest deal to date, a partnership to develop specialized medical technology that would revolutionize rural healthcare. James Peterson, the healthcare conglomerate's founder, was notoriously difficult and had been looking for any excuse to renegotiate terms. When his team learned of the potential scandal involving Sophia, they pounced, claiming moral clauses in the contract. For 3 days straight, Sophia worked around the clock, bringing in her legal team, led by the formidable Zara Mahmood, a brilliant attorney who had been Sophia's roommate at MIT. Together they not only salvaged the deal but strengthened it, with Zara finding leverage in Peterson's own company history that made him suddenly amenable to the original terms. When it was done, Sophia sat alone in her office, exhausted but clear-headed. The crisis had reminded her of what she'd built, but also clarified what she was willing to change. 3 days passed with no word from Sophia. Marcus threw himself into being a father, helping Emma with her science project, trying to ignore the ache in his chest. On Saturday morning, as they worked on papier-mâché planets in their small apartment, the doorbell rang. Emma ran to answer it, returning with wide eyes. "Dad, there's a pretty lady at the door with a big telescope." In the doorway stood Sophia, looking nervous in jeans and a sweater, so different from her CEO persona. Beside her was an enormous professional telescope. "I heard someone was studying the solar system," she said softly. That night, the three of them sat on the apartment building's roof, taking turns looking at Jupiter's moons. When Emma fell asleep against Sophia's shoulder, Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "The board accepted a policy change instead of my resignation," Sophia whispered. "But I've been thinking, maybe it's time for a different kind of change anyway." Emma took to Sophia with surprising ease. Perhaps it was the telescope, or perhaps it was the way Sophia spoke to her, not with the careful sympathy of adults who knew she'd lost her mother, but with genuine interest in her thoughts. When Emma asked difficult questions about black holes and the heat death of the universe, Sophia didn't simplify or deflect but engaged seriously, sometimes saying, "That's a fascinating question. Let's research it together." Marcus watched their growing bond with a mixture of joy and trepidation. One evening, as he tucked Emma in, she asked, "Is Sophia your girlfriend now?" When he hesitated, she added, "It's okay if she is. Mom would want you to be happy. She told me that before she went to heaven." Marcus hadn't known about this conversation, and the revelation left him sitting on the stairs afterward, tears streaming down his face. Vanessa Reynolds, Marcus's sister, was more cautious about the relationship. During her monthly visit from Boston, where she worked as a literature professor, she observed Sophia carefully. "She seems wonderful," Vanessa admitted as she helped Marcus with dishes after dinner, "but this is happening so fast. And there's such a power imbalance." Marcus understood her concerns. Vanessa had been his rock after Claire died, flying in every weekend for months, helping him navigate single parenthood. Her protectiveness came from love. "I know it seems sudden," he told her, "but it also feels like something that was always supposed to happen." Vanessa studied her brother's face, seeing a light there that had been missing for years. "Just promise me you'll still take it slow," she said, squeezing his hand. "Emma needs stability, and so do you." 6 months later, Marcus stood in a different doorway, watching Sophia help Emma with homework at their dining table. Moving in together had been a leap of faith, but seeing them together, his brilliant, curious daughter and this extraordinary woman who had chosen them both, he knew it had been the right choice. Sophia had stepped down as CEO to become Chief Innovation Officer, a role that gave her more flexibility and still utilized her talents. Marcus had been promoted to Marketing Director, no longer directly reporting to her. Life wasn't perfect, they still navigated complicated dynamics at work, and Emma sometimes tested boundaries with her new bonus mom, but it was real and rich and full. The transition hadn't been without challenges. Some colleagues whispered that Marcus had slept his way to promotion, while others suggested Sophia had sacrificed her ambition for romance. The new CEO, Thomas Chen, had been Sophia's mentor for years and supported their relationship, but corporate politics were inevitable. At home, they were learning to blend their lives, Sophia's minimalist aesthetic with Marcus's comfortable clutter, her spontaneous late-night work inspirations with his structured routines. Emma had nightmares occasionally, waking up calling for her mother, and Sophia learned to step back, giving father and daughter space to honor Claire's memory while finding her own way to comfort them both. Richard Hargrove surprised everyone by becoming one of their strongest allies. After the board meeting, he had invited Sophia to lunch, where he shared the story of his own regrets. "I chose wrong," he told her. "Don't make my mistake." Now retired from the board, he occasionally joined them for dinner, bringing books for Emma and becoming an unexpected grandfather figure. When a particularly vicious article appeared in the business press questioning Sophia's judgment, it was Richard who wrote a blistering response, defending both her business acumen and her right to personal happiness. His support helped silence the critics and gave Sophia permission to embrace this new chapter without guilt. That night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus found Sophia on their balcony, looking at the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked, the question that still sometimes haunted him. "Opening that door changed everything for you." Sophia turned to him, her face serene in the moonlight. "Some doors are meant to be opened, even by accident," she said, taking his hand. "They lead us exactly where we need to go." The telescope she'd brought that first night now had a permanent place on their balcony. Emma had developed a passion for astronomy, and Sophia had encouraged it, arranging a visit to the planetarium where her college roommate worked as director. Dr. Leila Patel had taken Emma under her wing, inviting her to special viewings and sending her books about women in astronomy. Marcus watched his daughter's world expanding in ways he couldn't have provided alone, her confidence growing as she found new passions and possibilities. Sophia's parents had been hesitant about the relationship at first. Traditional and protective, they worried about their daughter giving up her CEO position and moving in with a ready-made family. But the first time they saw her with Emma, explaining the constellations with animated gestures, Mrs. Kwan had turned to her husband with tears in her eyes. "She looks like herself again," she whispered. "Not the businesswoman, but our Sophia." They began visiting regularly, Mr. Kwan teaching Emma to make dumplings while Mrs. Kwan shared stories of Sophia's childhood that made her groan with embarrassment and Marcus laugh until his sides hurt. 1 year after the door incident, Marcus proposed on the rooftop where they had first stargazed with Emma. He had involved his daughter in the planning, and she stood nearby, bouncing with excitement as Sophia said yes through happy tears. The wedding was small. Just family and close friends in the botanical garden where Marcus and Claire had once loved to walk. Emma served as both flower girl and best daughter, proudly carrying the rings. During the ceremony, Marcus included a moment to honor Claire's memory, lighting a candle with Emma while acknowledging that love doesn't end with loss but grows in new and unexpected ways. There wasn't a dry eye as Sophia then knelt to give Emma a small locket containing a family photo. The three of them plus a small picture of Claire, promising to cherish both the past and their future together. Life settled into new patterns. Sophia's innovation team developed breakthrough technology that made Meridian more successful than ever, while allowing her to be home for dinner most nights. Marcus's marketing department thrived under his leadership, his campaigns winning industry awards. Emma excelled in school, especially in science, with both parents supporting her curiosity. They faced challenges too, health scares, work setbacks, the normal friction of family life, but they faced them together, stronger for having found each other. On quiet evenings, Marcus sometimes marveled at how differently things might have turned out if he hadn't turned that doorknob at precisely the wrong, or perhaps precisely the right, moment. One small action, one split-second mistake, had altered the trajectory of 3 lives forever. As he watched Sophia helping Emma build a model rocket for the science fair, he realized that sometimes the wrong door turns out to be exactly the right one, if you're brave enough to step through it together. If this story of unexpected love and second chances touched your heart, remember that life's most beautiful moments often come from our biggest mistakes. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that wrong turns can lead to right places, and follow for more stories that remind us all that it's never too late for a new beginning.
Daddy, why is the poor little girl selling bread on Christmas Eve Those 12 words shattered Wyatt Clark's carefully constructed walls in an instant. His daughter's innocent question would lead him to do something most would call impossible: transform a stranger's tragedy into a miracle. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Daddy, look! Elodie's whisper cut through the falling snow like a blade. Her small hand, warm in Wyatt's grip, suddenly went rigid as she pointed toward the bakery entrance. A child stood there, no more than 9. Her thin jacket hung loose on her tiny frame. "Please, fresh bread." The girl's voice barely carried over the wind. The grocery bags in Wyatt's other hand suddenly felt obscenely heavy. They had just bought ingredients for Christmas morning pancakes: butter, syrup, fresh strawberries. Meanwhile, this child— "Daddy, why is the poor little girl selling bread on Christmas Eve?" Her eyes searched his face for an answer he didn't have. The question hung in the frozen air between them. Wyatt watched another couple hurry past the girl, their eyes deliberately averted. Then a businessman, phone pressed to his ear, stepped around her like she was a street lamp. Invisible. She was invisible to them, but not to Elodie, and suddenly, not to him.
The girl shifted slightly, and Wyatt noticed how she kept her weight on her left foot, the right one wrapped in plastic bags inside a shoe with a visible hole. She'd fashioned makeshift waterproofing from garbage bags and rubber bands. Resourceful, desperate, 9 years old. "She looks cold, Daddy," Elodie whispered, pressing closer to him. "Really, really cold, like how I felt that time we got locked out and had to wait for the locksmith. But worse." "Wait here, sweetheart." Wyatt guided Elodie to stand by the cafe window, its warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. "Stay where I can see you." He approached slowly, his footsteps crunching in the fresh snow. The girl's eyes tracked his movement, wary, calculating, already preparing to run if needed. "Hi there," Wyatt said gently, crouching down to her eye level. This close, he could see the purple shadows under her eyes, the chapped lips, the way she shifted her weight from foot to keep warm. "What's your name?" Those brown eyes studied him for a long moment. "Eden." "Eden! That's a beautiful name. I'm Wyatt." He kept his voice soft, non-threatening. "How long have you been out here?" "Since noon." "Since noon." Wyatt glanced at his watch. 7:43 p.m. Nearly 8 hours in the freezing cold.
"Where are your parents, Eden?" Something flickered across her face. Pain. Quickly hidden. "My uncle takes care of me." "And where is he?" Eden's gaze shifted toward the tavern across the street. Through the grimy window, Wyatt could make out a figure slumped over the bar, surrounded by empty glasses. Rage, hot and sudden, flooded Wyatt's chest. He forced it down. Not now. Not in front of this child. "Eden, how often do you do this? Sell bread?" "Every day after school, weekends all day." She said it matter-of-factly, like other children might talk about soccer practice. "And if you don't sell everything?" Eden's silence was answer enough. "Where do you get the bread?" Wyatt asked gently. "The bakery." She pointed to the closed shop behind her. "Mr. Emily gives Uncle Easton day-old bread for cheap in the morning. I have to sell it for $5 each. Uncle Easton says it builds character." Character. Wyatt's jaw clenched hard. It hurt. Wyatt stood up, his mind racing. 3 loaves remained in her basket. $15. $15 standing between this child and whatever waited for her in that tavern. He pulled out his wallet, then stopped. Simply buying the bread would solve nothing. Tomorrow she'd be back, and the next day, and the next. Unless— "Elodie," he called. His daughter bounced over. "I want you to buy Eden's bread. All of it."
He handed Elodie a $20 bill, watched as she solemnly presented it to Eden. "Here you go. Merry Christmas." Elodie's smile was pure sunshine. Eden's eyes widened. "But this is too much. The bread is only—" "Keep the change," Wyatt said firmly. Then louder, ensuring anyone watching from the tavern would hear, "Thank you for the bread. We love fresh bread." He took the loaves, placed them carefully in his grocery bag, then handed the empty basket back to Eden. "Now you can go back, right? You sold everything." Eden nodded, but the resignation in her eyes made Wyatt's chest ache. She knew this was temporary. They both did. "Wait." Wyatt pulled out his business card. "Eden, I want you to remember something, okay? If things ever get bad, if you need help, you call this number, day or night." Eden took the card, her fingers trembling. From cold or emotion, Wyatt couldn't tell. She studied it carefully, then tucked it deep into her pocket. "Promise me," Wyatt said. "Promise you'll call if you need help." "I promise," Eden whispered. She took 3 steps toward the tavern, then turned back. "Mr. Wyatt, nobody ever asked my name before. When they buy bread, I mean. They just take it and go. So, thank you for asking." The words hit Wyatt like a physical blow. How many people had walked past this child, purchased her bread, and never even wondered who she was? As she walked toward the tavern, each step smaller than the last, Elodie tugged on Wyatt's coat. "Daddy, why does she have to go back there? Why can't she come with us?" The question pierced something deep in Wyatt's chest. For a moment, he saw another face, Penelope's face, pale and beautiful even in those final days. She would have already been halfway to that tavern, ready to fight whoever she needed to fight. We protect the vulnerable, always. That's what makes us human. Her voice, clear as day in his memory. "It's complicated, sweetheart," he finally answered, though the words tasted like ash. That night, Wyatt couldn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, searching. Eden Matthews. There had to be something, some record. There. A newspaper article from 2 years ago. House fire claims lives of Timothy and Sarah Matthews. Faulty space heater blamed. Old daughter survives. Custody granted to uncle. The accompanying photo showed a different Eden, smiling, held between 2 loving parents. Before. This was before. Wyatt clicked through more articles, piecing together the tragedy. No other relatives. Frank Matthews, the uncle, had been their only option. A bachelor with no experience raising children, but family was family. The courts had decided. Family was family. Another article, this one from 6 months ago. A small mention in a school newsletter about students selling items for fundraising. There was Eden, same basket, standing outside a different store. The article praised students for their entrepreneurial spirit. Entrepreneurial spirit. They had no idea. Wyatt thought about Eden's hollow eyes, her resignation, the way she'd flinched when he'd stood up too quickly. His phone sat on the table beside him. As a social worker for the county, a job he'd taken after Penelope died, needing to channel his grief into something meaningful, he knew the system, knew how hard it was to prove neglect. A child with shelter and food, even if that child was forced to earn that food, the courts might not see it as abuse. But making a 9-year-old stand in the freezing cold for 8 hours on Christmas Eve, that had to count for something. He pulled up his work database, checking for any prior reports. Nothing on Frank Matthews. Eden had been invisible to the system, just as she'd been invisible to the shoppers walking past. Wyatt stared at the photo of Eden with her parents. Her mother had the same brown eyes, the same determined chin. Her father's hand rested protectively on her shoulder. They'd loved her. It was obvious in every line of their bodies, every smile. And now she was alone, selling bread in the snow while her uncle drank. "I'm sorry," Wyatt whispered to the parents in the photo. "I'm sorry we failed her. But I won't fail her again." 3 days passed. 3 days of Wyatt driving past that corner, never seeing Eden. 3 days of Elodie asking about the bread girl. 3 days of him wondering if he should have done more. Then his phone rang. "Mr. Clark?" The voice was barely a whisper. "It's Eden. You said to call if—" Wyatt was already reaching for his keys. "Where are you, sweetheart?" "The park on Riverside. Uncle Easton locked me out. He said I'm eating too much food and I can't come back until tomorrow." "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Find somewhere warm to wait.
The bathroom, a sheltered area, anywhere out of the wind. Okay. Mr. Clark, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart. I'm coming. You're going to be okay.
I tried to go to the library, but it's closed. And the coffee shop manager said I can't stay without buying something. I don't have any money. Uncle Easton took the $20 from Christmas Eve. He said I must have stolen it because nobody pays that much for bread. Wyatt found her on a bench, knees drawn to her chest, shivering so violently he could hear her teeth chattering from 10 feet away. Her lip was split, blood dried at the corner. Eden, your lip. I fell, she said quickly, too quickly. Wyatt shrugged off his coat, wrapped it around her shoulders. She disappeared inside it, so small, so fragile. That's it, he said, his voice steady, despite the rage burning in his chest. We're going to the police, right now. No. Eden grabbed his arm. They'll take me away. Foster homes are... She stopped, but Wyatt heard what she didn't say. Foster homes were unknown. Uncle Easton was a devil she knew. Eden, listen to me. Wyatt knelt in front of her, making sure she could see his eyes. I work with children who need help. It's literally my job. I won't let you disappear into the system, okay? But we have to report this. We have to make sure you're safe. You promise you won't let them forget about me? The question broke his heart. How many adults had already forgotten about this child? I promise. I'll be there every step of the way.
Eden pulled something from her pocket, his business card, worn soft from being handled so many times. I kept it, she said. I looked at it every night. Sometimes I pretended you were my dad, that you'd come get me and take me home. Is that weird? No, Wyatt said, his voice thick. That's not weird at all. The next hours blurred together. Police station. Eden's statement, delivered in a voice so quiet the officer had to lean forward to hear. Photographs of her bruises, not just the split lip, but marks on her arms, her back. Old ones, new ones. A map of pain on a child's body. The female officer who photographed Eden's injuries had tears in her eyes when she emerged from the examination room. That child, she said to Wyatt, has been through more than any child should endure. The old fractures in her ribs, the scars, this has been going on for a while. Easton Matthews was arrested at 11:47 p.m., pulled from the same bar where he'd been sitting while Eden froze in the park. He'd sneered at the officers, claimed Eden was lying, that she was a difficult child who made up stories. But the bruises didn't lie. The neighbors, who came forward with stories of hearing Eden cry, didn't lie. The teacher who'd noticed Eden falling asleep in class, who'd seen her counting lunch money like her life depended on it, she didn't lie. I tried to report concerns, Miss Rodriguez told the officers, but Eden always had explanations. She was so good at covering for him. She protected him even as he hurt her. Eden was placed in emergency foster care that night. A nice family, the social worker assured Wyatt, experienced with traumatized children. But as Wyatt drove home, Eden's card, the one he'd given her, clutched in his hand like a talisman she'd returned to him for safekeeping, he knew this wasn't over. It couldn't be over. Daddy? Elodie was supposed to be asleep, but there she stood, in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Did you find the bread girl? I did, sweetheart. Is she okay?
Wyatt thought about lying, about protecting his daughter from the harsh realities of the world. But Penelope had always said honesty, age-appropriate honesty, was better than pretty lies. She's safe tonight, but she needs a lot of help. Elodie padded over, climbed into his lap. Can we help her? I'm going to try. Good. Mommy would help her too. Wyatt's throat tightened. How do you know that? Because Mommy always helped people. That's why she became a nurse. She told me before she went to heaven. She said helping people is what hearts are for. Sometimes Elodie remembered things about Penelope that Wyatt had forgotten she'd been old enough to understand. 4 years old when Penelope died, but somehow she'd absorbed her mother's spirit, her compassion. You're right, Wyatt said, kissing the top of her head. Mommy would definitely help.
Then we have to help extra much, Elodie said with the logic of a 7-year-old. We have to help for us and for Mommy. The foster home was nice, clean. The foster parents, Jim and Patricia, were kind people who'd been doing this for 15 years. But when Wyatt visited Eden the next week, she looked diminished, like someone had turned down her volume. "How are you doing?" he asked, sitting across from her at the kitchen table. Eden shrugged. "It's fine." "Eden?" "It's fine," she repeated, louder this time. "I have food, a bed, it's fine." But her eyes said something different. Her eyes said she was drowning, just in a different kind of water. Wyatt had brought Elodie with him, despite the foster parents' hesitation. But the moment Elodie bounced into the room, something in Eden shifted. "Hi," Elodie announced. "I brought you something." She pulled out a stuffed elephant, purple and well-loved. "This is Ellie. She helped me when I was sad about Mommy. Maybe she can help you too." Eden took the elephant carefully, like it might disappear if she held it too tight. "Thank you." "Do you want to be friends?" Elodie asked with the direct simplicity only children possess. Elodie looked at Wyatt, then back at Elodie. "I'd like that."
Good, because Daddy says you might come live with us. I've always wanted a sister. Wyatt nearly choked on air. "Elodie, we haven't—" "You said we were going to help her," Elodie said, confused. "The best help is family. That's what you told me when Grandma moved in after Mommy died." Out of the mouths of babes. Eden was staring at him now, hope and fear warring in her eyes. You'd want me?" And in that moment, Wyatt knew. He'd known from the second he'd wrapped his coat around her shivering shoulders, maybe even from the moment Elodie had asked why the poor little girl was selling bread on Christmas Eve. "Yes," he said simply, "we'd want you." Eden's face crumbled. "But I don't know how to be in a real family. What if I'm too broken? What if I can't be fixed?" Wyatt moved around the table, knelt beside her chair. "Eden, you're not broken. You're hurt. There's a difference. Broken things get thrown away. Hurt things heal. And you don't need to be fixed. You need to be loved. That's all. Just loved." The process was a marathon. Background checks that scrutinized every aspect of Wyatt's life, home visits where social workers examined electrical outlets and asked about discipline philosophies, interviews that dug into his grief over Penelope, his ability to parent a traumatized child, his financial stability. "Mr. Clark," said one social worker during a particularly grueling interview, "you're a single father who lost his wife relatively recently. Are you sure you're ready to take on a child with significant trauma?" "I'm a single father who knows what loss feels like. I understand grief. I understand pain. And I understand that healing happens in community, not isolation. Eden doesn't need a perfect family. She needs a real one." Being a social worker himself helped. He knew the system, knew what they needed to hear, knew how to navigate the bureaucracy. But it still took 3 months. 3 months of visits where Eden slowly learned to smile again, where she and Elodie became inseparable, Elodie chattering enough for both of them, where Eden started calling him Mr. Wyatt instead of Mr. Clark, each word a small step toward trust. During one visit, Eden showed him a notebook she'd be keeping. "I write down all the good things that happen," she explained shyly, "so I don't forget them." Wyatt read some entries. "Elodie shared her cookies with me. Mr. Wyatt remembered I don't like pickles. Patricia let me help make dinner. I laughed at Elodie's joke about the chicken. Mr. Wyatt said I was brave." Such small things, such ordinary kindnesses that she felt the need to document, afraid they might disappear like morning mist. The placement day was April 15th. Wyatt thought with dark humor, appropriate, since he was about to claim the most important deduction of his life. Eden stood in the doorway of what would be her room. They'd painted it soft yellow. She'd mentioned once that sunflowers were her favorite because they always faced the light. Elodie had made a banner, "Welcome Home Eden," in rainbow colors. "It's really mine?" Eden whispered. "It's really yours." She took one step in, then another.
touched the desk they'd bought, the bookshelf already half filled with books Elodie had picked out, the bed with its sunflower comforter. Then she burst into tears. Not the quiet, suppressed tears Wyatt had seen before. These were deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from her very soul. 3 years of pain and fear and loneliness pouring out in a flood. Wyatt gathered her into his arms, this child who wasn't his by blood, but was already his in every way that mattered. "It's okay. Let it all out. You're home now."
"I thought," she gasped between sobs, "I thought no one would ever want me. Uncle Easton said I was too much trouble, that my parents died to get away from me." "No." Wyatt pulled back, made sure she could see his face. "Your parents loved you. I've seen the pictures, the articles. They loved you so much. And now we love you. Elodie and I, we choose you. Do you understand? We choose you." Eden nodded, hiccuping through her tears. Elodie appeared in the doorway, crawled onto the bed beside them. "Don't cry, Eden. We're sisters now, forever and ever." "Forever?" Eden asked, like she was afraid to believe it. "Forever and always and infinity," Elodie confirmed. "That's longer than forever." The first year was hard, harder than Wyatt had anticipated, and he'd anticipated a lot. Eden hoarded food in her room, crackers under her pillow, apples in her drawer. Even knowing there would always be more, her body remembered hunger. They worked through it together, Wyatt helping her pack a small snack bag she could carry everywhere until she felt safe. "It's okay to keep snacks, but let's keep them in a special box so they stay fresh and the ants don't come." She had nightmares, terrible ones, where she'd wake screaming about fire, about being locked out, about bread that wouldn't sell. Wyatt would sit with her, sometimes until dawn, reading stories or just being present. One particularly bad night, Eden sobbed, "I can still smell the smoke, sometimes, from the fire that killed them." Wyatt held her tighter. "That must be so scary." "I should have died too. Then I wouldn't have had to go with Uncle Easton." "No," Wyatt said firmly, "you survived because you were meant to, because Elodie needed a sister, because I needed another daughter, because you have important things to do in this world."
She flinched at raised voices, apologized constantly, asked permission for everything, to get water, to use the bathroom, to exist. But slowly, so slowly, she began to heal. The first time she laughed, really laughed, not just a polite smile, was when Elodie attempted to make pancakes and somehow got batter on the ceiling. Eden's laughter started as a giggle, then grew into something beautiful and free. The first time she called him Dad was an accident. She was asking for help with homework, frustrated with fractions, and said, "Dad, I don't understand this." Then she froze, eyes wide with fear. I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "Eden," Wyatt's voice was thick with emotion, "you can call me whatever feels right. Dad, Wyatt, Mr. Wyatt, hey you, whatever makes you comfortable." She thought about it for a long moment. "Dad," she said quietly, testing the word. "Dad feels right." The legal adoption was finalized on Christmas Eve, exactly a year after they'd first met. Judge Harrison, an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair, reviewed the paperwork one last time. "Mr. Clark, it says here you're requesting to legally adopt Eden Matthews, to give her your last name and to assume all parental rights and responsibilities." "Yes, Your Honor." "And Eden, you understand what this means, that Mr. Clark will legally become your father." Eden, wearing a new green dress Elodie had picked out, nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, he already is my father. This just makes it official for everyone else." Judge Harrison's eyes misted slightly. "In my 30 years on the bench, I've overseen many adoptions. But there's something special about a family that chooses each other. Mr. Clark, what you've done is extraordinary." Wyatt shook his head. "No, Your Honor. I just did what anyone should do. I gave a child a chance."
"That's where you're wrong," the judge said. "Most people buy the bread and walk away. You changed a life." She signed the papers with a flourish. "By the power vested in me by the state of Minnesota, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. Eden Matthews is now legally Eden Clark. Congratulations to your family." "We're officially sisters!" Eden caught her laughing through tears. Then she turned to Wyatt, this child who'd once stood invisible in the snow, and said the words he'd never dared to hope to hear. "Thank you for saving me." "No, sweetheart," Wyatt said, pulling both his daughters close. "Thank you for saving us." Because the truth was, Eden had saved them. In the year since Penelope's death before meeting Eden, Wyatt and Elodie had been surviving, going through the motions, maintaining traditions that felt hollow without her.
But Eden had brought something back to life in their house. Not a replacement for what was lost, but something new, something beautiful born from tragedy. She'd given Elodie a sister, someone to protect and love and argue with over bathroom time. She'd given Wyatt a purpose beyond his grief, a reason to be better, stronger, more present. And perhaps most importantly, she'd shown them that love wasn't finite. It didn't divide when shared. It multiplied. The news story came out 3 months later. "Local social worker adopts girl he saved from abuse," the headline read. The reporter wanted to focus on Wyatt's heroism, but he redirected every time. The real hero is Eden. She survived years of abuse and neglect. She had the courage to trust again. She chose to love again, despite everything she'd been through. That's heroism. The article went viral. Messages poured in from around the country, people sharing their own stories of adoption, of rescue, of choosing family. But one message stood out. It was from a woman named Margaret, Penelope's former colleague at the hospital. "I worked with Penny for 5 years. She always said the measure of a person isn't what they do when things are easy, but what they do when they're hard. She would be so proud of what you've done. But more than that, she would be proud of who you become. A man who sees the invisible. A father who expands love rather than guards it. Thank you for honoring her memory in the most beautiful way possible." Eden is 16 now. She volunteers at a youth shelter every weekend, working with children who remind her of herself. She tells them her story, not to frighten them, but to give them hope, to show them that rock bottom can become a foundation. She still has bad days. Trauma leaves marks that never fully fade. Sometimes she wakes up afraid. Sometimes she hoards food despite years of plenty. Sometimes she apologizes for taking up space in her own home. But she also has a father who chose her, a sister who adores her, and a future that once seemed impossible.
Last week, she got accepted into a pre-social work program for high school students. She wants to follow in Wyatt's footsteps, to be for other children what he was for her, a lighthouse in the storm. "Why social work?" Wyatt asked, though he suspected he knew. "Because," Eden said simply, "everyone can save someone. You taught me that." Every Christmas Eve, the Clark family has a tradition. They buy fresh bread from local bakeries, dozens of loaves, and deliver them to families in need. But not just bread. With each loaf comes a gift card, a warm coat, and a handwritten note. "You are seen. You matter. Don't give up." Eden insists on this. She says it's her way of making sure no child stands in the cold selling bread while the adults who should protect them fail in their duty. This year, as they made their deliveries, they encountered a boy, maybe 11, sitting outside a convenience store. His sign read, "Homeless. Anything helps." Eden approached him first. "What's your name?" He said Marcus warily. She handed him a loaf of bread, still warm, and a $100 gift card. Then she did something else. She handed him Wyatt's business card. "If you need help, real help, not just food for today, but a chance for tomorrow, you call this number." Marcus looked at the card, then at Eden. "Why would you help me?" Eden smiled, that hard-won smile that had taken years to bloom. Because someone helped me once. On a Christmas Eve just like this, when I was selling bread in the snow, a man and his daughter saw me, really saw me, and instead of walking past, they did the unthinkable. They made me family.
That's impossible, Marcus said. No, Eden replied, looking back at Wyatt and Elodie who were watching from the car. The impossible is just the right thing disguised as the hard thing. And sometimes when you do the hard thing, you discover it was actually the easy thing all along. But why would someone take in a stranger's kid? Eden knelt down to Marcus's level, just as Wyatt had once knelt to hers. Because love isn't about blood, it's about choice. And choosing to love, choosing to help, choosing to see someone who's invisible, that's not unthinkable. That's just human. The unthinkable thing would be to walk past. As they drove home that night, Elodie asked, "Do you think Marcus will call?" "I don't know," Wyatt admitted, "but he knows he can. Sometimes that's all we can give, the knowledge that someone cares." Eden was quiet in the back seat, staring out at the falling snow. Finally, she spoke. "Dad, thank you." "For what, sweetheart?" "For doing the unthinkable." Wyatt met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "What do you mean?" "Most people just buy the bread and walk away. They feel good about themselves for a moment, then forget. But you saw a child who needed a father, and a father who needed another daughter, even if he didn't know it yet. You saw a sister without a sibling and a sibling without a sister. You looked at broken pieces and saw how they could become whole." She paused, then added, "You didn't just save me from Uncle Easton. You saved me from becoming invisible forever. You gave me a voice, a name, a place in the world. You gave me love when I'd forgotten what it felt like." Elodie reached back, grabbed Eden's hand. "We're family forever." "Forever," Eden agreed. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Wyatt stood in the doorway of Eden's room. She'd kicked off her covers in her sleep the way she always did. He pulled them back up, tucking them around her shoulders. On her nightstand sat 3 things. The purple elephant Elodie had given her that first day in foster care, a photo of all 3 of them at her adoption hearing, and a piece of bread preserved in resin, a reminder of where she came from and how far she'd traveled. Wyatt thought about Penelope, about what she would think of their expanded family. He could almost hear her voice. "Love multiplies, Wyatt, always. The more you give, the more you have." She'd been right. Loving Eden hadn't diminished his love for Elodie or his memory of Penelope. It had expanded his heart in ways he hadn't known possible. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus. From tonight. Can we talk?" Wyatt smiled. Here we go again, he thought, but this time he wouldn't be doing it alone. This time he had Eden and Elodie beside him, proof that the unthinkable was just another word for love in action. He typed back, "Of course, we're here when you're ready." Because that's what families do. They grow, they expand, they make room. They take the unthinkable and make it inevitable. And sometimes on snowy Christmas Eves, they transform questions like, "Daddy, why is the poor little girl selling bread?" into stories of redemption that ripple outward, touching lives in ways they never imagined. The unthinkable, it turns out, is just love wearing work clothes. And love, real love, never walks past. It stops, it sees, it acts. It chooses. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of choosing family and changing lives, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere tonight there's a child waiting to be seen, and somewhere else there's a family waiting to grow. Sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to do the unthinkable. Remember, we can't save everyone, but everyone can save someone. And sometimes that someone saves you right back.
Hey, my name is Mason. I'm 25 and I live alone in a small rental house on the edge of Bend, Oregon. It's the kind of place where the streets are quiet after 8, the air smells like pine, even in summer, and the only real noise comes from the occasional truck rumbling past on its way to the mountains. I work at a little bike repair shop a few blocks from downtown. Nothing fancy, just a narrow storefront with a roll-up door, a couple of workbenches, and a radio that only gets 3 stations. I like it that way. The work is honest. You see a problem, you fix it. And when the customer rides off with a smooth chain and a smile, you know you did something right. Across the street from my house is Julia's place. She's 34, maybe 35, I never asked. She moved in about 3 years ago, right after I did. At first, we were just the kind of neighbors who waved when we grabbed the mail or nodded over the fence while watering the grass. Then it turned into small things. She'd bring over a plate of cookies on a Sunday afternoon, still warm from the oven, and I'd help her carry a new planter up the steps when the delivery guy left it on the curb. Once, during a windstorm, her gutter came loose and started banging against the side of the house. I grabbed my ladder and fixed it before the rain came. She paid me in cold beer and a quiet thank you that felt like more than the job was worth. Julia is, well, she's the kind of woman you notice without meaning to. Tall, with dark brown hair that she usually pulls back in a loose knot, green eyes that catch the light when she laughs, and a way of moving like she's always in control, even when she's just carrying groceries. She works from home, something with interior design, I think. I've seen her on calls in her front yard, pacing with a tablet in one hand and a coffee in the other, talking about color palettes and timelines like it's the most natural thing in the world. She's sharp, independent, the kind of person who doesn't need anyone but somehow still makes you want to be around. We never talked about anything deep. Just the weather, the best place to get takeout, the fact that the mailman keeps mixing up our packages. But there was a rhythm to it, a comfort. Like we'd settled into this quiet little routine without ever deciding to. Then one evening in early June, everything shifted. I was sitting at my kitchen table eating a frozen pizza straight from the box because I couldn't be bothered to find a plate, when there was a knock at the door. Not the casual tap of a neighbor dropping off a misdelivered package. This was urgent. 3 sharp raps like someone was trying to wake me up. I opened the door and there was Julia. She was wearing a simple black dress, the kind that hugged her frame without trying too hard, her hair pulled back tight, a few strands escaping around her face. No makeup, which was unusual, and her eyes, those green eyes, were wide, almost nervous. I'd never seen her look nervous before. "Hey," I said, wiping pizza grease on my jeans. "Everything okay?" She didn't answer right away. Just stood there on my porch, one hand gripping the strap of her purse like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. "Yeah, of course." She walked past me, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood. I closed the door and turned to find her standing in the middle of my living room, looking around like she'd never been inside before. Which was weird. She had. A couple times. Once to borrow a screwdriver, once to return a book I'd left on her porch by accident. "Mason," she said, turning to face me. "I need to ask you something, and it's going to sound insane." I raised an eyebrow. "Okay." She took a breath. "Can you be my boyfriend?" I blinked, then laughed. Because what else do you do when your neighbor asks you that out of nowhere? But she didn't laugh. She just looked at me, dead serious. "Wait, you're not joking." "No," she said. "I mean, not really. I need you to pretend, just for a few days." I stared at her. "Pretend to be your boyfriend?" She nodded. "This weekend, I have to go home, my parents' place, down south near Ashland. They've been on me about getting married for years. I may have told them I've been seeing someone. A guy, younger, in the city." She winced. "I didn't think they'd take it so seriously, but now they want to meet him. And if I show up alone again, they're going to lose it." I rubbed the back of my neck. "So you want me to—" "What? Just show up and smile?" "More than that," she said. "I need someone they'll believe. Someone who won't freak out when my dad grills him about his 5-year plan. Someone who can handle my mom crying because she thinks I'm finally settling down." She paused. "Someone I trust." I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Julia, I fix bikes. I don't do—" family dinners. I know, she said quickly. I know it's a lot, but you're the only person I know who's decent and calm and won't make it weird. She reached into her purse and pulled out 2 bus tickets, held them out like an offering. It's just 3 days, Friday to Sunday. I'll cover everything, food, gas, whatever. And when we get back, I'll owe you anything. New tires for your truck, a month of free coffee, whatever you want. I looked at the tickets, then at her. She wasn't begging, not exactly. But there was something in her voice, something small and tired, that I'd never heard before. Like she was carrying more than just this weekend. I sighed. You really think this is going to work? She gave a tiny shrug. I don't know, but I can't do it alone again. I took the tickets. All right, I said. But if your dad asks me about kids, I'm blaming you. For the first time that night, she smiled. A real one. The kind that made the room feel a little warmer. Thank you, she said softly. You have no idea what this means. I waved it off. Yeah, just don't expect me to wear a tie. She laughed, actually laughed. And for a second, the tension in her shoulders eased. We spent the next hour on my couch going over the basics. Her parents' names, Linda and John. Her dad liked fishing, her mom cried at commercials. She had a younger brother who lived in Portland and wouldn't be there. We made up a story. We'd been seeing each other for 6 months, kept it quiet because of work. Nothing too serious, just seeing where it goes. I wrote it all down on the back of an old receipt. When she left, she paused at the door. You sure about this? She asked. I looked at her, really looked. The way the porch light caught the worry in her eyes, the way she was trying so hard to hold it together. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. She nodded. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and hugged me. Quick, tight, like she was afraid I'd change my mind. When she pulled back, she didn't say anything. Just smiled again, smaller this time, and walked back across the street. I closed the door and leaned against it. What the hell had I just agreed to? But as I looked at the bus tickets on the table, something stirred in my chest. Not dread, not even nerves, just curiosity. What would it be like, I wondered, to pretend to be hers? Even for a weekend, even if it was all a lie. The bus ride south felt longer than 4 hours. We left Bend just after lunch, the sky a pale blue that faded into gold as we rolled through the high desert and down into the greener valleys near Ashland. Julia sat by the window, earbuds in, but no music playing. Every few minutes she'd glance at her phone, then at me, then back out at the passing pines. I pretended to read a magazine I'd grabbed at the station, but mostly I watched her reflection in the glass. She'd changed since that night on my porch. Not drastically, just smaller things. She'd bitten her nails down. She kept twisting the silver ring on her right hand, and when the bus hit a bump, she didn't flinch. She just closed her eyes like she was bracing for impact. I nudged her with my elbow. You okay? She pulled one earbud out. Yeah, just rehearsing. Rehearsing what? How not to screw this up? She gave a tight smile. My mom's going to cry the second she sees you. My dad's going to ask if you can field dress a deer. And I'm going to forget every lie we made up. I laughed under my breath. We've got this. 6 months. Quiet. Work kept us busy. That's the story. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on the window. The bus dropped us at a small station just outside town. Julia's mom, Linda, was already waiting in a silver SUV, hazard lights blinking. She was out of the car before we'd even grabbed our bags. A short woman with Julia's eyes and a hug that nearly knocked me over. Oh, honey, she said, squeezing Julia so hard I heard her gasp. And you must be Mason. She let go of Julia and turned to me, arms open. I barely had time to drop my duffel before I was pulled into the same bone-crushing embrace. Hi, Mrs. Linda, she corrected, pulling back to look at me. None of that ma'am stuff. You're family now. I shot Julia a look. She mouthed, Told you, the drive to the house was 20 minutes of Linda talking nonstop. About the garden, the neighbor's new grandbaby, the fact that the church was doing a potluck on Sunday. Julia sat in the back with me, her hand resting on the seat between us. Not holding mine. Just there. The house came into view like something out of a postcard. A two-story cedar-shingled place with a wide front porch, rose bushes lining the walk, and a golden retriever, Buddy, I remembered, barking lazily from the steps. John was out front, wiping his hands on a rag. He was taller than I expected, lean, with gray hair and eyes that didn't miss much. He didn't smile when we pulled up, just nodded. "Julia," he said, voice low. Then to me, "Mason." "Sir," I said, offering a hand. He shook it, firm but not trying to prove anything. "Call me John." Linda was already halfway up the steps, chattering about dinner. Julia grabbed her bag and mine, but I took it from her. "I got it." She gave me a small, grateful smile. Inside, the house smelled like wood polish and something baking. The walls were covered in photos. Julia as a kid with braces, Julia at graduation, Julia with a guy I didn't recognize in some older shots. I tried not to stare. Linda showed me to the guest room, a small space at the end of the hall with a twin bed, a quilt that looked handmade, and a window overlooking the backyard. Julia's room was right next door. I could hear her unpacking through the wall. "Dinner's in an hour," Linda called. "John'll give you the tour." The tour was quick. John walked me through the garden, pointed out the shed where he kept his tools, showed me the spot where the roses had been dying until Julia sent him some fancy fertilizer from the city. He didn't say much, just, "She worries about us, always has." I nodded. "She's good at that." He glanced at me. "You two serious?" I opened my mouth, closed it. The lie we'd practiced felt suddenly heavy. "We're figuring it out," I said. He grunted. "Fair enough." Dinner was roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans from the garden. Linda talked the whole time. John asked questions, careful ones. Where I grew up, what my parents did, if I'd ever been fishing. I answered honestly where I could. When he asked about my job, I told him about the shop. The kid who'd brought in a bike with a chain so rusted it snapped in my hand. Julia laughed, really laughed, and for a second, the table felt easy. Then John leaned back. Fork paused midair. "So," he said, "when's the wedding?" Linda gasped. "John!" Julia froze. I swallowed. "We, haven't really... We're not rushing," Julia cut in, smooth as anything. "We're just enjoying this part." John's eyes flicked between us. He didn't push. Just nodded and took another bite. After dinner, Julia and I did the dishes while Linda and John watched some old Western in the living room. The kitchen was quiet except for the clink of plates. "You okay?" I asked, passing her a glass. She dried it slowly. "I hate lying to them." "Then why do it?" She looked at me, eyes tired. "Because the truth is worse. I'm 34 and still alone, and I don't know why." That's what they hear when I say I'm fine. I didn't know what to say, so I just bumped her shoulder with mine. "Hey, you're not alone this weekend." She smiled, small but real. Later, after Linda had gone to bed and John was out back smoking a cigar, Julia knocked on my door. She was in pajamas, soft shorts, and an old t-shirt, hair down for the first time all day. "Can't sleep?" I asked. She shook her head. "Too much in my head." She came in and sat on the edge of the bed looking out the window at the moonlit garden. "I used to hate coming home," she said quietly. "Every time, it was the same questions. When are you bringing someone? Don't you want kids?" I stopped coming for a while, then I started lying, and now... She trailed off. "Now you've got me," I said. She turned to me. "Yeah, I do." We didn't say anything else, just sat there, the space between us small but not awkward. After a while, she stood. "Night, Mason." "Night, Jules." She paused at the door. "Thanks for not making this weird." I smiled. "Too late for that." She laughed softly and left. I lay back on the bed staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet now, just the faint tick of a clock downstairs and the occasional creak of old wood. I should have been nervous. Should have been rehearsing lines. But all I could think about was the way she'd said my name. Like it meant something. The next morning smelled like coffee and bacon. I woke to sunlight slicing through the curtains and Buddy's wet nose nudging my hand under the door. Downstairs, Linda was already at the stove, humming something from the radio. Julia sat at the table in a loose sweater, hair still damp from a shower, scrolling her phone with one hand and holding a mug with the other. Morning, I said, scratching the back of my neck. She looked up and smiled. Easy, like we'd done this 100 times. Sleep okay? Better than the bus seat. Linda turned, spatula in hand. There's my future son-in-law. Sit, eat. We've got a big day. Julia's eyes widened. Mom. What? The summer fair's today. A whole town will be there. You two are going. John walked in, newspaper under his arm. He didn't say anything, just poured coffee and leaned against the counter, watching. I took the seat next to Julia. Our knees brushed under the table. She didn't move away. After breakfast, Linda practically pushed us out the door. Wear something nice and bring back kettle corn. The fair was a 10-minute drive held in a field behind the old Grange Hall. There were booths selling jams, hand-carved spoons, and quilts thick enough to sleep under. Kids ran wild with cotton candy. A bluegrass band played on a flatbed stage. It was the kind of small-town chaos that felt warm instead of crowded. Julia slipped her arm through mine as we walked in. For show, she whispered, but her fingers stayed curled around my elbow. We wandered. She bought lemonade. I won her a stuffed bear at the ring toss. Pure luck. But she hugged it like I'd built it myself. At the Ferris wheel, she hesitated. You scared of heights? I teased. No, just not great with being stuck. I paid for 2 tickets anyway. At the top, the wheels stopped. The town spread out below us, rooftops, church steeple, the river glinting in the sun. She leaned into me just a little. This is nice, she said. Yeah, I said. It is. When we got off, John was waiting by the gate, arms crossed. He didn't smile. Walk with me, he said. Julia started to follow, but he shook his head. Just Mason. We ended up by the livestock pens, the air thick with hay and manure. He lit a cigarette, offered me one. I declined. You seem like a good kid, he said, but I've seen good kids break my daughter's heart. I swallowed. I'm not trying to. I know what trying looks like. Question is, what happens when you stop? I didn't have an answer, not a good one. He took a drag. She doesn't bring people home, not anymore. Last guy, she thought he was it. He wasn't. Left her picking up pieces for a year. You know what that does to a father? I nodded. Then you know I'm watching. He didn't say it like a threat. Just a fact. Back at the house, the afternoon blurred into evening. Linda made lasagna. John opened a bottle of red. The conversation stayed light, until it didn't. We were halfway through dessert when John set his fork down. So, he said, wedding plans? Linda swatted his arm. John! Julia choked on her wine. I coughed, nearly inhaling a noodle. We're not there yet, Julia said quickly. We're just taking it slow. John raised an eyebrow. Slow's fine, but this house has ears and walls. He looked at me. Guest room's got a loose floorboard, been meaning to fix it. Figured I'd do it tomorrow, which means tonight you two will share Julia's room, make things easier. Linda gasped. John, you can't just... It's practical, he said. They're adults. Julia's face went scarlet. Mine probably did too. After dinner, we cleared the table in silence. In the hallway, Julia grabbed my wrist. I'm so sorry, she whispered. He's never... This is insane. It's fine, I said. We'll survive. Her room was small. 1 double bed, 1 dresser, a window overlooking the roses. She dug out an extra blanket and pillow. I'll take the floor, I said. No, we're adults, remember? She tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. We changed in the bathroom, one at a time. I came back in boxers and a t-shirt. She was already under the covers, wearing an oversized college tee, hair loose around her shoulders. The lamp cast a soft gold glow. I slid in on the far side. The mattress dipped. We lay there, backs to each other, the space between us no more than a foot but feeling like a canyon. Minutes passed. Maybe an hour. You awake? She whispered. Yeah. This is ridiculous. Little bit. She rolled over. I could feel her breath on my neck. I used to share this bed with my ex, she said quietly. Senior year. He'd sneak in through the window. We thought we were so clever. I turned to face her, Our noses were inches apart. What happened? He wanted different things. I wanted this. She gestured vaguely at the room, the house, the life. He wanted the city, parties, freedom. I wanted roots. And now I don't know what I want. Her voice cracked. I just know I'm tired of pretending I don't need anyone. I reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't pull away. You're not pretending tonight, I said. She closed her eyes. I know. We didn't kiss, didn't cross that line. But we fell asleep like that, facing each other, breathing in sync, the space between us shrinking with every exhale. Outside, the roses rustled in the breeze. Inside, for the first time all weekend, neither of us was acting. The next morning, the house woke before we did. I heard Linda downstairs, the clatter of pans, Buddy's nails clicking across the floor. Julia was already up, sitting on the edge of the bed, hair a mess, knees pulled to her chest. Sunlight spilled through the curtains and painted gold stripes across her bare legs. Morning, I said, voice rough. She turned, eyes soft. Hey. No awkwardness, no rush to explain the night before. Just the quiet understanding that something had shifted. We dressed in silence, me in the bathroom, her in the closet. When I came out, she was brushing her teeth at the sink, foam at the corner of her mouth. She caught my eye in the mirror and smiled around the toothbrush. I smiled back. Downstairs, Linda had made pancakes. John was reading the paper, coffee steaming beside him. He glanced up when we walked in together. Sleep okay? He asked. Julia's hand brushed mine under the table. Best in years. The day was ours. Linda had a church thing. John was off to fix a neighbor's tractor. They left us with a list. Weed the rose beds, check the mail, water the tomatoes. Domestic chores that felt strangely intimate. We started in the garden. The air was warm, thick with the smell of earth and petals. Julia handed me gloves. Our fingers touched when I took them. You any good at this? She asked, kneeling by the roses. I kill houseplants, I said. But I can follow directions. She laughed, showed me how to snip the deadheads without hurting the new buds. We worked side by side, the sun climbing, sweat beading on our skin. Every so often, our arms brushed. Neither of us moved away. At one point, she sat back on her heels, wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist. You ever think about staying? She asked. In a place like this? I looked at the house, the garden, the quiet street beyond. Sometimes, but Ben's home. She nodded, eyes on the dirt. Home's a weird word, isn't it? I left this place to find something bigger. Now I keep coming back to remember what I left. I set the shears down. What do you want, Jules? Really? She was quiet a long time. Then, I want to stop being afraid of wanting. I didn't know what to say to that, so I reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She leaned into my hand, just for a second. We finished the roses, moved to the tomatoes, then the mail, then the porch swing where we sat with iced tea and watched Buddy chase butterflies. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I don't want to go back to pretending tomorrow. Then don't, I said. She looked up. It's not that simple. Why not? Because you live across the street. Because this was supposed to be a weekend. Because... She stopped. Because I don't know how to do this without ruining everything. I took her hand. We're already ruining it, in the best way. She laughed, a real one, and it broke something open between us. That afternoon we walked to the creek behind the house. The water was cold, clear, running over smooth stones. We took off our shoes and waded in up to our ankles. She splashed me, I splashed back. We ended up soaked, laughing like kids, falling onto the bank with wet clothes and grass in our hair. Lying there, staring at the sky, she said, I used to come here when I was little. Pretend I was somewhere else. Now I just want to be here. I rolled onto my side. With me? She met my eyes. Yeah, with you. I kissed her then. Not tentative, not careful, just inevitable. Her mouth was warm, tasting like lemonade in summer. She kissed me back like she'd been waiting years. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. This is real, she whispered. I know. We didn't talk about what came next, didn't need to. The rest of the day was small moments. Her fingers laced through mine while we washed dishes, my hand on the small of her back when we carried laundry upstairs. The way she looked at me across the dinner table when Linda asked if we wanted seconds. John watched us all evening. Didn't say much. But when he thought no one was looking, I caught the faintest curve of a smile. That night, we didn't pretend to sleep apart. Julia's room, her bed. No more space between us. We didn't cross every line. Just held each other, talked until the early hours. About everything, nothing. The sound of her breathing became the only thing that mattered. At some point, she murmured, "Stay." I kissed her temple. "I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the roses bloomed under the moon. Inside, the play was over. And the real story, quiet, messy hours, had just begun. The morning we left smelled like coffee and cut grass. Linda was up early, packing us leftovers in Tupperware that would never fit in my duffel. John stood on the porch with Buddy at his heels, hands in his pockets, watching the sky like he was reading the weather in the clouds. Julia came down the stairs in jeans and the same black dress from the night she'd asked me to play pretend. Her hair was loose, eyes still soft from sleep. She carried both our bags. Linda pulled her into a hug that lasted too long. "You call when you get home." "I will, Mom." Then she turned to me. "Mason." Another hug, tighter this time. "You take care of my girl." "I plan to," I said, and meant it. John stepped forward. He didn't hug, just offered his hand. I took it. "You did good," he said quietly. "Both of you." He pressed something into my palm, a small jar of strawberry jam, the label handwritten in Linda's neat cursive. "For the road." Julia smiled when she saw it. "Mom's famous jam." On the bus, we sat in the back. She leaned her head on my shoulder without asking. I didn't mind. The ride was quiet. Just the hum of tires, the occasional cough from the guy 3 rows up, and the soft weight of her breathing against my arm. Halfway to Ben, she spoke without lifting her head. "If you want out," she said, "say it now, no hard feelings." I turned so I could see her face. "Jules, I mean it. This was supposed to be a weekend. You didn't sign up for—" I kissed her, quick, firm, enough to stop the words. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, "unless you tell me to." She searched my eyes, then nodded, small and sure. When we pulled into Ben, the sun was low, painting the mountains pink. We walked the 3 blocks from the station to our street. Our houses sat across from each other, same as always, but everything felt different. She stopped at her gate. "So," she said, "neighbors again?" I stepped closer. "Something like that." She smiled, real, unguarded. "Come over tonight. I make a mean lasagna. Only if I get to bring the wine." Deal. That night, I stood on her porch with a bottle of cheap red and a heartbeat that wouldn't slow down. She opened the door in an apron, flower on her cheek, and pulled me inside by the front of my shirt. We didn't talk about labels, didn't talk about moving in or meeting friends or what we'd tell people. We just cooked. Ate. Laughed when the sauce splattered. Washed dishes side by side, her hip bumping mine every time she reached for a towel. Later, we sat on her couch, my arm around her, her legs across my lap, watching some old movie neither of us cared about. At one point, she looked up. "This is weird," she said. "Good weird. The best kind." Weeks turned into months. I still fixed bikes. She still designed rooms, but now, my truck stayed in her driveway more than mine. Her coffee mug lived on my counter. Buddy's leash hung by my door because he liked my backyard better. We took the jam jar to the park and ate it with spoons on a blanket, laughing when it stained our fingers red. One Sunday, Linda called. Julia put her on speaker. "You two coming for the fall festival?" Linda asked. Julia looked at me. I nodded. "We'll be there," she said. Linda whooped. John's voice came faint in the background. "Tell Mason to bring his tools, gate's still squeaking." We hung up. Julia set the phone down and crawled into my lap. "No more pretending," she said. "No more pretending," I agreed. Some nights, I still think about that first knock on my door. The way she stood there, nervous and brave and asking for something impossible. I think about the lies we told, the truths we found, the space between houses that used to feel like a street and now feels like a heartbeat. love doesn't always start with fireworks. Sometimes it starts with a frozen pizza, a desperate favor, and a jar of strawberry jam. Sometimes it starts with pretending and ends with staying.